What would you do if saving one animal meant killing another? Because that's the real question playing out right now in Big Bend National Park. Park rangers have started removing, yes, killing Barbary sheep, also called Aoudad, to protect native desert bighorn sheep. It's controversial, emotional, and it's dividing Texans who love the outdoors. So what's really happening out there? Hi everyone, I'm Patrick with LoveLeigh Adventures, and this story is one of those tough ones that makes you rethink what conservation really means. In September, Big Bend National Park shut down entire sections of the park for wildlife management operation and aerial removal of Aoudad sheep. If that sounds harsh, it is, but it's also part of a decades-long effort to bring back one of Texas' most iconic native animals, the desert bighorn sheep. Today we're breaking down what's happening, why it's being done, and whether killing invasive animals really helps save the wild or just creates a new problem. Let's start with the basics. Big Bend National Park in far west Texas covers more than 800,000 acres of deserts, canyons, and mountains. It's home to mountain lions, black bears, and countless desert species found nowhere else. But one species you shouldn't find there is the Aoudad, also known as the Barbary sheep. They were brought to Texas from North Africa in the 1950s for trophy hunting. They thrived in the desert terrain, reproduced fast, and spread into wild areas like Big Bend. Now they outnumber the native-born sheep by the thousands. The native desert bighorn sheep used to roam the mountains of West Texas freely, but by the 1960s they were nearly wiped out. Disease, overhunting, and habitat loss. Wildlife agencies have spent millions trying to bring them back, with breeding programs and relocations from other states. In late September, Big Bend National Park announced temporary closures in several zones: the Mesa de Iguala, Dagger Flat, Dead Horse Mountains, and other backcountry areas. Helicopters flew over the mountains removing Aoudad sheep as part of a joint operation with Texas Parks and Wildlife. It's not a random hunt. Marksmen target Aoudad specifically to reduce their population and give native species room to recover. The park calls it invasive species management. Officials say it's necessary because the Aoudad compete with bighorns for food and water, carry diseases that infect the native sheep, damage fragile desert plants, and take decades to regrow. But the method, lethal removal, has sparked fierce debate online and in local communities. According to park scientists, Aoudad reproduce about 3 times faster than bighorn sheep, and because they're larger and more aggressive, they tend to push bighorns out of key feeding areas. The bigger problem? Disease. Aoudad carry pathogens like mycoplasma, which can cause deadly pneumonia in native bighorns. Even a small outbreak can wipe out entire herds. So rangers say that if they don't control the Aoudad now, the bighorn restoration project could collapse. It's not just about one park, it's about the future of bighorns across West Texas. Ecologists say there's hard data backing this up. Aoudad populations in Texas are estimated at 30,000 to 40,000, while desert bighorns number only a few thousand. When Aoudad move into bighorn territory, the native herds usually decline or disappear within a few years. Studies show Aoudad also graze more heavily, stripping vegetation that desert plants need to survive. Over time, that leads to erosion, which changes entire landscapes. So this isn't just about 2 kinds of sheep, it's about the health of an entire ecosystem. Here's the tricky part. Aoudad didn't just ask to be here. Humans brought them for hunting, then let them escape into the wild. Now they're being punished for surviving too well. It's one of those gray areas where every side feels partly right. Hunters argue they bring tourism dollars. Conservationists argue they destroy native balance. And the Park Service is caught in the middle, trying to protect one species without turning the public against them. That's why the story isn't black and white. It's about how far we're willing to go to fix what humans broke. So what happens if the park just leaves the Aoudad alone? According to wildlife biologists, bighorns could lose access to critical food and water. Diseases could spread faster, and populations that took decades to rebuild could collapse again in a matter of years. In short, do nothing isn't neutral. It's a choice that lets invasive species win by default. That's why Big Bend's plan is aggressive now. They want to act before the damage becomes irreversible. Of course, not everyone's on board. Hunter groups argue that Aoudad are now part of Texas wildlife and should be managed, not wiped out. Some say the government should allow public hunts instead of aerial removal, giving hunters a role while still reducing numbers. Others question whether enough evidence exists to prove Aoudad are truly destroying the ecosystem. Social media posts show photos of dead Aoudad with captions like senseless killing, while park supporters counter with saving our native sheep. It's a classic conservation battle, emotions versus data. This isn't just happening in Big Bend. Across the U.S., wildlife managers are constantly removing invasive species, from feral hogs in Texas to Burmese pythons in Florida. It's one of the hardest jobs in conservation because every action feels cruel, even when it's necessary. At the end of the day, parks aren't just trying to protect animals, they're trying to protect entire systems. And sometimes that means making heartbreaking choices. When you see the words aerial removal, it sounds harsh, but to rangers and ecologists, it's the last resort after everything has failed. If the plan works, Bighorn sheep could finally thrive again in the park. Their comeback has been one of the biggest wildlife success stories in Texas history. A healthy population would restore a missing piece of the Chilean Desert puzzle, a species that belongs there, grazing the same cliffs and ridges their ancestors did centuries ago. The park says this program won't happen every year. It's a short, targeted effort. Once Aoudad numbers drop, they'll monitor recovery with cameras, ground surveys, and helicopter counts. So the goal isn't endless killing, it's long-term balance. Still, it leaves a big question hanging. How can we really call it saving nature when it involves destroying part of it? That's the moral weight behind stories like this. Every conservation project comes with trade-offs. Every decision leaves someone unhappy. But here's the thing, doing nothing leaves everyone at risk. If balance means hard choices, maybe the lesson is to stop breaking ecosystems in the first place. What happens in Big Bend is part of a much larger debate. How do we deal with invasive species that humans created? Do we fight to restore what was or accept the new normal? These aren't just Texas questions, they're global ones. From wild pigs in Australia to lionfish in Florida reefs, the same story repeats. Once something spreads, it's almost impossible to undo. Big Bend's Aoudad removal might look small, but it's a test case for how far we'll go to protect native life. So here's what I want to ask you. If you were in charge of Big Bend, what would you do? Would you remove the Aoudad to save the bighorns, even if it meant killing thousands of animals? Or would you let nature take its course, even if it meant losing a species that belongs here? There's no easy answer, but ignoring the question means letting someone else decide for us. If you care about Texas wildlife, this is the time to pay attention. The park is asking for public feedback on future management plans. You can read the full statement on Big Bend's official website. I'll link it in the description. And if you got strong feelings about this, or for or against, drop a comment below. This is one of those rare moments where outdoor lovers, hunters, and conservationists all have something to say. Let's talk about it respectfully, because these conversations shape what happens next. I'm Patrick with LoveLeigh Adventures, and I'll keep flowing this story and others like it, the ones where conservation meets controversy. Thanks for watching, and remember, sometimes protecting the wild means making the hardest choices of all.